This is the very first episode of Industry Intelligence, and I'm honored that my first guest is no other than Ed Connors. Ed bought Gold's Gym in 1979 and took it to 704 locations, 46 states, and 26 countries. And when we look at modern fitness, we all stand on the shoulders of Ed Connors. Ed is not only a pioneer in this space, he truly molded what we know as modern fitness today. And he did it through the 1980s, 90s, and early 2000s. He's still giving advice to this day to founders, operators, and developers. Ed is a veteran, an architect, a designer, an operator, a franchiser, and an author. And I couldn't be more honored to have one of my mentors, Ed Connors, as the first guest of Industry Intelligence. I hope you guys enjoy it as much as I did. Ed Connors, this is my first episode for Industry Intelligence, which is a hyper-specific podcast to help developers, investors, health club owners, operators, and founders get the information that they need to have an impact on the health and fitness industry. You're my first guest, and I'm so honored to have you as my first guest. And the reason I wanted you as the first guest, because when you think about starting a podcast like this to provide value to the industry, there's very few names that rise to the top of people that not only are juggernauts and pioneers in our industry, but somebody that fundamentally shaped what health and fitness and health club in the industry is today. And you played a massive role in that. And more importantly, when I was building athletic culture 7 years ago, you were gracious enough to give me some of your time and mentor me. And the lessons that you gave me on the very first phone call actually changed my drawings and my layout. I had sent you my blueprints and some of those, I'd like to talk about that advice because the first thing you said was my cafe was too large. You don't have enough parking. It's wasted square footage. People are going to spend a lot of money in the cafe. They're going to take up longer parking spots. I actually half the size of that cafe, and that was excellent advice because you said every square foot that you pay for should either create revenue or create a better member experience. And I took that. The other thing is I had too many offices and I had doors on my offices. And you said, Ryan, you've got too many offices. People are going to get lazy. They're going to hide, but also there's sexual harassment that happens in there. Remove the doors and downsize the office space and have them work in a co-working space. And you also gave me advice on the youth care and on my change rooms because I didn't really create enough privacy and comfort in my change rooms. It was too open concept. And we changed that. And you see that with a lot of clubs now. And then lastly, it was the entryways into the female change room side by side, too close together, which didn't even think the architects and engineers that I worked with, and that's what makes you special is you are an architect. You wanted me to divide those entryways so that no one could say, "Oh, I mistakenly walked into the woman's. A man could walk in there," and that was in one phone call, right? So I think to myself, how valuable could Ed at 80 years old now? You're 80, I believe now, right?
81.
81, right? And still looking great. How much value in this podcast today can we provide to the industry? And Ed, I just want to thank you for being here and thank you for the dedication to the health and fitness industry. And as I said, my goal, we want to talk about your story today, but I want people to walk away today that are thinking about coming into this industry or are in this industry to have direct access to you. And that is my goal. So Ed, I'd like to thank you for being here and just ask you how you are.
It's a pleasure to be here, and I'm fortunate. My health is still good at 81. I had open heart surgery 18 years ago, and I haven't been back to a hospital or doctor since.
Wow.
Um, I'm not a big fan of the American medical system.
Of course.
And,
Yeah.
uh,
The Western medical system at that, right?
right.
Yeah.
You're in Canada, so it's a bit, different culturally, but no, I mean, that's why I think I got into the gym business because my dad was a surgeon, my brothers are doctors, and they really don't get any training in what I would call health and fitness. And it's so valuable what the gyms do. That's why I quit being a full-time architect in 1985 to spend full time with the gyms because I felt that was more meaningful work.
Yes. Yeah.
And I'm still engaged. I hate to see people lose money
Yeah.
in a business I helped create.
Yes.
But there are so many simple things you can do to avoid failure. And right now, I hate the word challenging, but it's a very challenging time right now.
Yeah.
I've probably seen more gyms than anyone alive. And
Yeah.
I've been traveling in Europe for 8 months. I've seen, I'm sure over 100 gyms here.
Mm.
It's a little bit, I tell people, Europe is decades behind the US in terms of that business, but it's still fascinating to see what's going on.
Yeah, it is
Um,
actually fascinating, and I'm excited. Everything you just said is so true. And anybody that's in the health and fitness industry, you need no introduction. Everybody that's in the health and fitness industry, whether it's in bodybuilding, wrestling, in different sports, or they're in the gym industry, they know who Ed Connors is. But Ed, really, the fundamentals that we're going to walk through today is your book, The Three Muscleteers. And if anybody is in the health and fitness industry and you haven't gotten this book yet, I'll provide the link below in the YouTube description. This is one of the favorite books that I read. I read this, I believe, a year and a half ago now it was that I read it, and I couldn't put it down because I felt like I was on the journey with you. But also, I'm genuinely, wholeheartedly interested in the health and fitness industry. And you took us on a ride. We were talking about Moscow and Japan and the branding and the marketing and the equipment. And this is going to be the context of our conversation today. It's your story, but also walking through this. So, Ed, you're a veteran from Vietnam. You're an architect. You're a founder. You're a gym designer and franchiser, and then went on to have an exit. And you're now an author, and that's going to be the context of what we're going to talk about. Going through from 1979, one location to 704 locations, 46 states, I believe, in 26 countries, and 3 million members at one point in time into a private equity exit, which is you did it too in some of the most challenging times. It's much different now. We have a larger capacity in the health and fitness industry, and consumer awareness and the appetite for it is much higher than the 80s and 90s. So you were really walking through the unknown, where now there's a lot of data we can look back at and say, oh, franchise, licensing, Pilates, yoga. We can kind of look and make, but you didn't really have that. You were kind of like cutting through and trying to make, you didn't have data to pull from, and you didn't have
right.
the internet to market yourself. So, what I want to do is I want to go back and start the story around Vietnam, right? And coming out of that in 1971, I believe it was, you came out in 1971, and then you went straight into architecture. I just want to know, did that shape the man that you are, being a veteran in Vietnam?
I think so. It taught me that I'm tougher than I thought I was.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and I think that's kind of the story of my life in terms of doing things like even writing a book. I mean, people would always say to me, "Ed, you should write a book." Well, then during
Yeah.
COVID, when I was sort of, the world was shut down, I wasn't. I kept moving around, but I said, "Well, I'll write a book."
Yeah. Why not?
And then I thought, well, my market doesn't really read. I should narrate the book. I had never narrated a book, so I spent 7 days narrating 7 hours,
Wow.
which the book, the audio book is about 5,000 words more. I had the luxury of a year between the print version and the audio, and if I had more time, if I'd seen my book, it weighs a pound, but it's not even 300 pages. If I had known that, I would have, put more information in there regarding the Gold's Gym portion.
Yeah. Well, that's what I was reading it, and then I get through it, and like I loved hearing about John Cena and all the different bodybuilders and Lee Priest and Jay Cutler and Arnold Schwarzenegger, so much stuff. But like for me, because of the industry I'm in, selfishly, I just wanted to like really hear more about so much of what it takes to take something like one location in Venice Beach with handmade equipment, with no cardio, no classes, to what it became, right? So now you come out, you become an architect. Let's talk quickly because this had to shape how you built Gold's Gym and the success of it. I feel like it gave you a massive advantage being an architect, just understanding how spaces should flow and design. So let's just talk about your architecture career. You come out of Vietnam, you go into architecture. Why architecture?
Ever since I can remember, since I was probably 10 years old, I wanted to be an architect. And
Okay.
I still love design, probably more than the whole fitness industry. I mean, that's one reason I'm in Europe is that I've probably seen not only more gyms than anybody alive, but also more churches. I've been to more museums than most, I mean, most people could not even imagine how many I've
Yeah.
seen. So,
Yeah.
uh, no, it really did have a major, if you go through my book, as you pointed out, it really shaped my whole experience with Gold's Gym. It was very important because I was clearly aware of the need for more space as the industry evolved. And coincidentally, ironically, I was working for the office of Charles Eames in Venice, California, And there was a building available 2 blocks away, part of a warehouse. At the time that Pete Grumkowski and Tim Kimber and I bought Gold's Gym, it was at one location in Santa Monica. And I thought, when we were having trouble with our landlord, and I said, well, why don't we bring the gym back to its roots in Venice? So just that alone, just having it, the chance of just the odds of, discovering that building, which was probably one of the few commercial spaces in LA or Venice that could be easily adapted for a gym.
Hmm.
So we moved from 4,500 square feet. Keep in mind that even the Santa Monica location was a few hundred square feet bigger than the Venice location, and yet it was considered the Mecca. So when we moved to Venice in the first bay of that warehouse, we had 9,100 square feet. So we had doubled the Mecca in 1981. That's how, and when I tell people that number, because they're seeing gyms with aerobic studios that are 4,500 square feet.
Yeah.
So, but again, the architect in me said, well, we need a bigger space, we need higher ceilings, and people love the high ceilings
Yeah.
in the Venice,
Creates
which,
energy. Yeah.
yeah, it was 20 because you go in there, you kind of feel small.
Yep.
And, I hate going into low ceiling spaces. So that was very important. And, uh, it was, and then we evolved over, we really got lucky because the warehouse had 4 bays. So over time, we were able to grow from 9,100 square feet to 26,000. And that became the gym model for almost 2 decades.
Yeah.
Between 1980 and 2000, that was considered the model anywhere in the world. And then in around 2000, it began to bifurcate or split ultimately into about 5 categories. You had the
Okay.
high end, you had the low end, and you had the boutique studios and uh, the low cost, high volume, which we were actually pretty. I pioneered low cost gyms. I'll take claim to that because it was in 1980, 18 months after we bought the Gold Gym, I opened up the first franchise. It was called a license at the time in San Francisco. I'd gone to UC Berkeley and was familiar with the area. And but to be a franchise, you had to have a business plan. Well, we had no business plan. This is the first one. So we had a licensed, we had a trademark,
Yeah.
and we had a fee we charged for the use of it. So we were basically a licensee, organization at the time.
So there's two things in there that I want to talk on further, which is one of the biggest advice that you talk about is like your landlord could be your biggest mistake. And then I want to talk about the difference between licensing and franchising. But if we go back to we get the first location and I want to just talk about what's the fitness industry like in 1979, right? You're buying this, you're not really in the fitness industry, but what made you like talk about the first day you walk in, the equipment would have been just black steel equipment was welded together. We didn't have cardio, we didn't have group fitness. Talk about the fitness industry and then what made you want to get into it. And then there's a funny part of it where I think it was $100,000 you guys paid and you were saving for a BMW and that was your portion of the payment, right? So just talk, what was the industry like in 1979? What's it like walking in there? Why did you want to purchase the fitness industry? Because it had to have been a failing model at that point. Like what, or was it even a model, you know?
I understand that when Ken Sprague sold it to us, I mean, he was losing money. His wife had died suddenly, unexpectedly, and she had been running the gym, and he didn't really want the headaches. And in fact, we lost money our first year in business. So basically, back then there was Bill Pearl's gym in Pasadena and Vince Gironda in the Valley. So there were really only 3 hardcore gyms. The whole the industry was very primitive. I mean, that was one of the things I rebelled against when I was at UC Berkeley and I joined the gym to lose weight for the Army. I went to a Jacqueline LaLanne's European Health Spa in Oakland, which was actually the successor gym to one of his first clubs. But they were very expensive. They were, God knows how, $500 to $3,000 to join. And I know I hated being put in a 10 by 10 room and browbeaten for an hour to join, all the classic lines to intimidate you. And then, so when I opened my first franchise license in San Francisco, I started charging $19. I held up a $20 bill and I said, this is what America will pay, month in and month out for a gym membership. And that changed everything. We made the gyms affordable. And we sold short-term memberships.
Yeah.
People weren't doing that. You could buy a membership for a day, a week, month, whatever you wanted. So we were, truly customer service. And as you mentioned, the 9,100 square feet was considered huge at the time. There wasn't one bike in the gym when we bought. There was no cardio. And nowadays, of course, and even that's changing. But nowadays, most of the gyms I'm still involved with have 100 pieces of cardio.
Yeah, and we'll talk about that because I think that model's changing as well, like empty
Yeah,
ellipticals and empty treadmills and
yeah.
recumbent bikes and the stairs are popular, treadmills are popular, but functional spaces are really popular now with turf and moving differently versus just walking on a piece of cardio equipment. So we've got this gym. You come in for $100,000. The next step after that, you guys immediately go to the licensing model. So let's talk the difference between licensing and franchising. Licensing is just a trademark and you guys are able to use this logo. Are you giving any instruction on equipment, square footage? Is there any standard set, or do you just get to use the
Oh,
logo and there's no guardrails? Like, what's that look like?
well, we had to approve their plans, and that's where I
Okay.
came in as an architect.
Yeah.
And it is kind of wonderful, really, that so many of the Gold's gyms in the early days, and even now, they all looked alike. Sort of. I mean, they were all in. I don't like this idea of building this model, this cookie cutter model, like 24-hour LA Fitness, and then duplicating it all over. All of the gyms I was involved with were none of them were built from the ground up. They all went into existing buildings,
Yeah.
and we modified. And I think that makes a great deal of sense. So I would look at the plans, and I would do things like I did with you, and I would say, well, I couldn't be their architect, but I could certainly mark up a set of plans.
Okay.
So I would, I would, I would say, well, I remember going to one owner and who didn't let me see his plans. And I said, you don't have many female members. He said, yeah. And I said, well, let me see your locker room. Well, he had no showers. He had gang showers for the women.
Yeah.
I said, well,
I
that's your,
want That's your
that's your,
problem.
that's your problem.
Yeah. Well, there's a conversation right there because where did that co-ed? Because you really kind of pioneered the co-ed space. Because at one time, I think originally they had a couple days a week women would come in or something, right? So then you went full co-ed immediately.
Right, right. The gyms at the time, the major chains basically had Monday, Wednesday, Friday men, Tuesday, Thursday women, Saturday was co-ed, and Sunday the gyms were closed. So we really pioneered not only co-ed fitness, but 7-day fitness. Uh, and we got in a lot of trouble in that in the South, but eventually overcame that. And I think the only state where we didn't mandate that was, of course, Utah with the Mormons.
Okay. And that's what people don't understand. What we're standing on the shoulders of giants in the fitness industry. Like there's so much opportunity in the industry and there's a lot of loss. But I always say you have people that make so much money they don't know what to do with it, and then other ones that make no money. And like really difference between that is the product, the service, and the leadership. But people don't understand that we're truly standing on the shoulders of giants, like through the 80s, 90s, what happened into the early 2000s to where we're at now. There's such a story that most people aren't even aware of like going from 4,000 square feet to 91, now 9,100 square feet would be like how many people could you put in it? You know what I mean? Like it would be considered boutique. That would be a boutique. I mean, you could have yoga and Pilates in that now. Now you've got, 100,000 square feet or 150,000 square feet lifetime fitnesses, right? And I want to talk about these models. And I think the next part that we move into is developing the franchise model and then expanding to what you said was at that era was the blueprint, which I'm assuming is 20 to 30,000 square feet. That was kind of the model.
Yes, well, initially, when we began seeing results, we had a minimum of 10,000 square feet and then 15,000. And actually, we capped it there. In other words, some markets, like I had a gym in Santa Barbara with partners, wonderful Tony Calhoun, and, try and find 25,000 square feet in Santa Barbara.
Yeah.
You can't.
Yeah.
And but we ended up with three gyms, all under 15,000 square feet. They're still in existence. They're wonderful, and they were money makers. They were, I mean, we were the gym of choice. Now they were just bought up. Angel and Willie Bonas just sold their 22 Gold's Gyms or 23 in the Southern California
Hmm.
to EOS Fitness, but they're still in existence as gyms, and they
Yeah.
haven't changed a lot. I recently visited them, and they were in great shape. I mean, they'd been maintained. Um, in fact, June 16th, just a few weeks ago, was the 46th anniversary of my Gold's Gym in San Francisco, now called Fitness SF, but it's been in continuous operation all 46 years.
Wow. Continued on. So let's talk branding. Let's now that we kind of got an understanding of that first venture, like now that we're getting into where the gym's actually becoming what we know as Gold's Gym now. I've heard you talk about the power of the circular logo. I've also heard you say that we were kind of a chain of gyms masquerading, our clothing company masquerading as a gym. The sales of the clothing. I remember my first Gold's Gym muscle shirt I got. I felt like it added 10 pounds. I was so proud to wear the logo because the wrestlers and the bodybuilders
Yeah.
all wore it. And so let's talk about branding because I think that's where stories start is, with the branding, the storytelling, the logos. And then I want to talk a bit about the clothing because I think that's where all these concepts kick off from. Someone has an idea of a story they want to tell. So how important do you think logos and branding and the Gold's Gym circular logo, like I know you're proud of it, but how big of an impact do you think that had?
I think it's huge. I mean, clothing for us was a moneymaker, and for our gym owners, and basically you're getting your members to wear your brand all
Mm,
over their city.
yeah, of
And back in the day, in the 80s, certainly there wasn't the range of branded clothing there is now.
course.
It was kind of and we had a lot of fun with the clothing. We baggy pants, the cotton lycra, shorts, things that kind of almost look silly now, but they'll probably come back at some point. But we did things. I wanted people to buy the clothing first for the fit, second for the name.
Mm,
So we had some wonderful, the innovative ideas. I mean, like try and find a T-shirt now with a V-neck. I saw our bodybuilders kind of choking on the traditional T-shirt. Said we should have V-neck T-shirts, and that was a huge hit. Try and find that today. I mean, it's not easy.
yeah,
So I don't think there's much imagination in the clothing I see today. It's
no,
it's uh,
no,
it, it's too boring. Um, Lululemon's too expensive and unexciting. No wonder they're in trouble. It's so obvious. I mean, even I was in the Gymshark store in London. I thought it was terrible. It was an embarrassment. And
wow.
I guess they're going to be doing gyms. I hope to God they get some help because the store was pathetic.
Well, I do hope they get some help, and I hope anybody listening to this gets that's the whole point of this conversation. So let's move into concept and architecture, right? So like people kind of they're wrestling with their brand, they've got their ideal avatar. Now they're going to move into concept of like what do I actually want to create? Do I want to be boutique? Do I want to be middle price cheap fitness? Do I want to be luxury premier fitness? How big do I want to be? If you were working with someone and they were looking wrestling with a concept, how would you help them find the concept that's create to them that would be good for them?
Well, first off, I would ask them to do a business plan, which is something we required of all of our gym owners. And we had a pamphlet, eventually on a disc that they would have to go through and fill out so that we would all learn if the gym failed, perhaps what was wrong. I think one of the most critical things now is the population, which back then when I was, doing my own gyms and looking at areas, it was very hard to get demographic, or you usually had to pay at least $500 to get something kind of a general view of the market within, say, back then it was a 5 mile radius. Now it's so sophisticated, it's a 20-mile drive time. And you could, nowadays, again, I would not encourage anyone to uh, open a gym with fewer than 100,000 people within that 20-minute drive time. And I would also, you'd have to look at the breakout, the average household income and the ethnic mix. Some ethnicities don't work out as much as you need to have for your market to succeed. So, that's what I would have, and then I would have them list all the competition. What each competitor has,
Yep.
all the pluses and minuses, so you can see how are you going to be better. And the name is important. I mean, I could do a separate book now or chapter on the names that former Gold's Gym owners have picked. Unfortunately, the Gold's Gym name became associated largely with hardcore, and we were always fighting that to get more women into the gym. Um, the so I think, but still, I think Gold's Gym is still it's the authority on fitness. Someone asked me recently, what tagline would you use now? And I would say, well, it's been around since 1965, so it is the authority on fitness.
Yeah.
And God bless Arnold. Thanks for his. I mentioned in my book that we kind of rode his coattails for many years, but he in himself is a wonderful story. I hope every young person in America can watch that three-part series that Netflix did on him.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
there's
It's
so
absolutely amazing.
so many lessons in there, but he's basically kept Google at bay from taking over the Gold's Gym location. So if it weren't for him, I don't think even the Mecca would exist anymore.
No, that's absolutely truthful. Actually, I remember I think it was in your book, or either that, or I heard you say it before. Is Arnold asked, I think it was a World's Gym he had possibly, and he asked, why was your gym so much busier than his gyms? And you had mentioned the music and the energy and the customer service.
Yes, that's a good point. And that was in my book because at one point Joe Gold gave him World Gym to own, to run for about a 2-year period while Joe thought he was, he had some serious health problems. And Arnold's restaurant was about 2 blocks from the gym, and we would go there quite often. We had an account, and I remember one of the days there, he came over to the table, of course, thanking us for our business, but saying, why is your gym so crowded and mine not? And it was basically the music. The music was huge back then, and that's something I think a lot of gym owners are missing now.
Yeah.
Everybody, and that's again the change. People think, they don't understand change. Back then there were, people didn't have things in their ears. There was no, initially there's Walkman, and then, now they're earbuds and Spotify, and it's a whole nother world. But they're in their own little world, and
Yeah.
they're not in that group. So the music is probably one of the largest, most important changes to occur.
Yeah, well, I think that there's something about that because everybody's on the same frequency, jiving together, moving in the same direction to
Yeah,
the same beat. It kind of builds community versus when we put in our headphones, we're kind of in our own world, right? So I think
yeah.
as good as it is that people want to listen to their own music, it's a good thing. But I think that's something that's missing from the new era of gyms. You go in, it's stale, it's quiet, it's cold, and everybody's in their own world versus coming together under the same music.
Well, and that's something I learned from the Catholic Church. That was besides, my architecture background, I'm still a practicing Catholic, and I get so frustrated when I would go to, Mass on Sunday and I couldn't hear the preacher, the priest. And so I would talk to priests. I would give, priests free memberships to go to Venice, and they would tell me that one of the first things they would do when they're assigned to a new parish is to make sure that, the speaker system works.
Hmm. Yeah.
And that's so important. You've got a chance on a Sunday to reach thousands of people, and you've got to be heard. In the same way with the gym, my first priority when I took over a gym, I was involved in 37 of them, was to probably spend about 25 grand on a stereo system, and they called it a stereo system back then.
Yeah.
But nowadays, like, everything has gotten cheaper and better. But that's something that is very important and is missing now from a lot of the gyms.
Yeah, absolutely. And so like coming out of the concept and the music, when you took over in 1979, it would have been I remember reading that you took this equipment. It was blacked out. I think you painted it white. You also painted the logo on the mirror, so if anybody was taking photos, you knew that the Gold's Gym logo would be in the magazines, which was like a genius branding thing. But what was when you started to buy equipment out of the handmade or custom made equipment, what were the brands that you were buying in the 80s and then into the 90s? Like strength equipment and then the first bikes, because you introduced bikes. You had no cardio equipment. So let's talk equipment. What strength brands, then treadmills and classes and things of that, because that's obviously like a revolution, right?
Well, that was what made Gold's Gym the Mecca was Joe Gold and George Vipasik made the equipment for that gym, which we inherited, and it was fantastic equipment, kind of the beginning of resistance machines, really.
Hmm.
And but Carrion and Flex were the two big equipment manufacturers in Southern California, and I thought all the black equipment looked unfriendly. And my dad, in medical office had white equipment, white machines. And I said, well, that looks friendlier. Why don't we? And I asked both of them to paint the equipment white, and that's really a beginning of the whole different color approach. We eventually we didn't buy any equipment. We were given equipment by the various companies, so they use color to differentiate themselves.
Hmm.
Like Hammer might have brought in, equipment that was all, green and yellow or something. And so when you looked out at the gym, you could identify what the various brands were on the floor. I think that worked very well. And you would think, as an architect, I'd be bothered by all that mix match of color, but I thought it worked. Again, I think it was part of what gave the gym energy.
So
And I
that
go, you know,
Yeah, well, that's the thing because it would drive me nuts on a design. Like I don't mind using different textures or colors in a gym as long as they kind of like flow into the next style. Like maybe you're trying to divide your spaces, but there is some type of communication between the cohesiveness of the equipment. Maybe you want to do legs or glutes, or there's maybe you change the vinyls or some of the gradients or something, but it worked for Gold's Gym. So I didn't know that you guys were a lot of the equipment you're putting in, the companies were coming to you guys and putting it in as a branding deal for them.
but we had to convince them of the value. In other words, because people were being photographed in our gym, every
Yeah.
day. It
Yeah.
was like a three-ring circus with photographers in three of the four rooms. And, it took some convincing. Tom Wilson, one of our early managers, longest running manager, convinced them with Rich Minzer that, when people were, being photographed for the Weider magazines principally, they could see their equipment. And I really think we made Hammer Strength a brand overnight with all that publicity. So we then began, but we would tell them, if our members don't like it, or we have problems with it, we'll ask you to take it out. And we did that with some companies. So we were pretty picky, but
Yeah.
I think again, even today, think about it. They're really, when's the last time you heard someone go up to a gym counter and say, "Do you have any Life Fitness? Do you have any Techno Gym?" I mean, people still don't know manufacturers of gym equipment. There's no consumer loyalty out there.
Yeah, you're right.
Um,
It's expanding because consumer knowledge in the new generation, but that's specific people. Like most people don't understand biomechanics or resistance profiles or adjustability. They don't know the difference between something that works well and something that doesn't. To the average general population, they wouldn't know. But there is obviously that's one thing that bodybuilders and athletics and stuff, there is a growing consumer knowledge, but it's nowhere as near where it could be, like clothing or food and all these other industries,
Well,
right?
it could be so easy for these companies too. As an architect, I mean, I still I don't understand the treadmill people or even all the cardio make manufacturers because their equipment is so unattractive.
Yeah.
One of them should hire some car designer from BMW or Mercedes and say, let's have a go at this. Let's make this an exciting, fun piece to be on.
Yeah.
I can't even get the treadmill people to paint stripes on their belts so people don't step on a moving treadmill. It's just it's the obvious things that they don't, it's all black typically.
Yeah.
And I think the most
Yeah.
common lawsuit now in gyms in America is somebody stepping on a moving treadmill that breaks a wrist or ankle.
Yeah.
That could be so easily avoided, especially in these low light gyms.
Of
You
course.
talk about the black equipment, and that's something that's a whole nother maybe podcast is this phenomenon of all these black gyms where, the walls and ceilings are black, the equipment's black.
Yeah.
It's just, it's something I'm trying to, fathom or understand why that's happening. I think it has a lot to do with social media and how people look under light. But
Yeah, you're right. It is to do with the light, and I think it's just they're just trying to express hardcoreness without any real design
yeah,
element involved in it. I do like charcoal, I do like blacks, but it has to be offset with woods or concrete or
yeah.
glass or greenery or some type of you have to have another element mixed in there, right? Some creams or even an electric color like a yellow or,
Well,
depending on what you're trying to express. But just the blacked out gym is hardcore bodybuilding look, and it's
well, and
simple, but
I
it,
think you have to, if you, go for the broader market. We both know that Gen Z and millennials are the key, the major
yeah.
uh, membership base,
Hmm.
but it's the baby boomers that are also important to make. I think that's what's hurting the gyms right now post-COVID, is the baby boomers haven't come back in the same number, and as a result, they're losing that profit, critical part of their profit margin. And I think a lot of gyms are in trouble. I mean, that's why they've all raised their rates. When I don't know how many years ago it was, I remember, Lifetime Fitness, they're 125 a month. Now they're, over 300. Equinox over 300. So in all these, most of these, low budget gyms are now, they're up, I think I surveyed about 100 in LA the last time I was there.
Mm.
I think I would say the average monthly fee is $80.
Yeah.
And that's the same gym that was charging 40 before COVID, but now they can't survive. It's like the restaurants.
Yeah.
The $5 hamburger is now 20. I mean, everything is more expensive because of fewer customers.
Yeah.
It's a vicious circle too. So it's, at some point you got to stop because people aren't going to pay 25, $30 for a hamburger. They're going to learn to cook at
Yeah,
home.
exactly. There's an edge to run off. So in that industry, we're talking at that model. From what I'm, and I want to hear your perspective on this. From what I can see, everything's extrapolating to the edges. And what I mean, it's middle fitness seems to be the most struggling part. You get premium fitness, people are paying, like you said, $250, $300, $400 a month. You don't need many members to make that happen. You can buy premium equipment, good cleaning, good personal trainers, good staff, great service, and provide more of a service. On the bottom end, you need a lot of members, but it's low service. And no matter where the economy goes, there's always going to be somebody that needs 20 or $30 a month. A Planet Fitness, even though Planet Fitness is even struggling right now.
Well,
But you,
they've had the same model for, they were a former Gold's Gym owner.
I didn't know
They,
that. No.
yeah. Yeah, the people that started 20 Planet Fitness owned a Gold's Gym in New Hampshire. And at one point they were not making it. And it's kind of like the gang that couldn't shoot straight. They just said, well, screw it. We'll just sell memberships for $9 a month.
Yeah.
And it worked.
Yeah.
They discovered what I discovered back in 1980. People wanted an affordable membership. So, their model really is nothing new, but they've kept the same the same color scheme, the same
Yeah.
footprint for decades now.
Hmm.
And you just can't, as I said earlier, you just can't build these boxes and expect them to last. Change is inevitable, even
Yes.
without something like COVID. It's evolving. It's evolving right now. I think longevity center components inside the gyms is their future.
Yes, they
Where
are. I agree. Right? Because it
uh,
makes it measurable. It creates hyper personalization, gamification, and integration. I mean, that's what I say where the industry's going. And hyper personalization is like, where am I at and where do I want to go? Whether that's biometrics, it's cognitive decline, whether it's grip strength, bone density, all these different things, but personalizing your experience as you enter the club. Because we both know you start your fitness journey within 90 days, if you only are stepping on the scale and looking in the mirror, It's not long before you're like, this isn't working and you're starting to fail and you're wanting to leave. If you look and your blood pressure's better, your sleep score is better, your resting heart rate's better, your bone density, muscle mass, visceral fat, and you see these, you're like, okay, I'm going to be a better dad. I'm going to be a better husband. I'm going to live longer. You can see why you're doing this outside of the scale. And then gamifying it is it's all about that. It's like not gamifying in a weird way, but gamifying is like I don't have to just rely on looking better. I can actually rely on some of these metrics to show me that the work I'm putting in is better. And then the integration is I always say health and fitness is a lifelong journey. And you can't inherit it, you can't buy it. And even if you work really hard for 10 years, you don't earn it. You still have to continue on doing it. So like there's fundamental truths, strength training, cardiovascular, and maybe mobility and stability, but there's all these other cool things in health and fitness, whether it's racket sports, aquatics, Pilates, bar, people want to participate. So when you integrate these things, you're just kind of you're ensuring that people aren't going to have to go somewhere else to try these other things and then integrating even outdoor activities, right? A lot of people after COVID, even though the gym memberships are up, but people still wanted to play pickleball outside and go for run clubs and cycle and do stand-up paddle and do home workouts when they didn't have time to make it to the gym. So the clubs that can say, hey, we have a resource for this, you tend to hold on to those people longer. So I think the longevity side is the massive play right now and just measuring people, right? And gamifying it.
Well, it's interesting that when Pete, Tim, and I bought Gold's Gym, steroids were legal, and they were, legal for the first 9 years. Then they became illegal, and now they're legal again if you have money.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
uh, you've got Equinox. Equinox says they have a waiting list for people wanting to pay $40,000, $50,000 a year.
Yeah.
Love Life Fitness opened their first facility
Yes.
in Segundo, California, and their premium membership is $50,000. Now, imagine you being, the clerk behind that desk having to try and sell somebody a $50,000 membership. They're convinced that there are enough people out there to make that work. I don't know. I really I'd love to see their numbers, but I want to make if I'm working on with people on Longevity Center, I want to come up with something that's affordable that you could go to your gym and say, oh yeah, today I'm going to pay for I'd like to do a cold plunge and infrared therapy, and a one-time thing, not being locked into some very expensive monthly due system. And
Yeah.
but ultimately you could get it so affordable that people would do that. But I think the gyms need to offer some of these options that are considered part of that longevity world. Um,
I agree because Ed, the profits in our industry are in the lifetime value. The longer someone stays, the more money you're going to make. And if you're trying to make all your money in 1 year or in a 90-day trial, that's where you're losing the game versus keeping someone for 10 years. They're a walking billboard telling everybody's asking them, where are you going? What are you doing? They're posting about you online and they're referring 100 people over the next 10 years. And they're at all your events. They're your cheerleader. They wear your logo proudly. Like it's like having micro marketers walking all over the city. So if you can implement some of these things you're speaking of and make them more affordable, and I think they will become more affordable to a certain point, because this is where I wanted to go with you on this, is like technology advances at rapid rates and it gets really expensive, whether it's AI or all cell phones, all these different things, and then it becomes inexpensive when it gets to the masses. But how do we get to the point where some of these services could be more affordable to the consumer when you have to have square footage and the cost of real estate and the cost of the technology and the equipment that you use to do it? Like, where do you think there's a tipping point where we advance so far, the costs go so high, and then somebody comes in and says, I can offer these services at a better rate?
as far as the square footage goes, I don't think it takes a lot to offer the longevity portion, maybe
Hmm.
under 3,000 square feet.
Yeah.
So I think that's and rents right now in America. I've just consulted with three different operators who are opening gyms in three different states, different parts of the U.S. They're all paying about $1 a square foot a month. So that makes things more affordable. So I think maybe the landlords are getting when we started Gold's Gym franchising, landlords didn't want a gym in their
No.
their mall. Now they're begging. I mean, Willie and Angel Bonos, who had the 23 Gold's gyms in LA and Southern California, most of their gyms were in malls, Westfield malls.
Yeah.
And they and I would say, well, our members they eat pizza, they shop.
Yeah.
They were all worried about our members spending 2 hours in their parking lot, but that's not an issue now. I mean, there are just so many dead malls.
Yeah, I know the malls are the death of it. And that's the thing with gyms, they bring in thousands of people, and those people come to your area three, four, 5 times a week. So you get heavy foot traffic. When I speak to developers now, the anchor of the biggest developments here in Canada, they want the fitness centers first. They want the health clubs because it's a guaranteed, right out of the hole, 3,000 people pre-sold. And a lot of these clubs here are carrying in the city, we're carrying anywhere from 5 to 10,000 members at a time, and we're selling premium fitness. I have clients that are their membership's 350 to $400 Canadian dollars, which is what, maybe $300 US, but they're a premium client, and those clients tend to spend more money. Plus, they get their groceries, like you said, they eat lunch. There's all these other benefits. So I'm excited to the dollar a square foot thing blows my mind because we're paying like for even if you get into industrial areas here, you're paying $10 a square foot plus TMIs. If you get into Toronto or any of the suburbs around Toronto, you're pushing 25, $30 a square foot plus TMIs, right? So,
The last time I was in Canada in Toronto a
mhm.
couple of years ago, I was shocked at rental rates and home prices.
Yeah, it's
I don't know
unbelievable.
what's wrong there, but again, I would advise that person to
Go to
keep looking.
America. Go to
Yeah,
America.
yeah. Well, there's some truth to that.
Yeah,
I really think Canada is being mismanaged.
it is. It is. And nobody here would disagree with you on either side of the spectrum, left or right. There's hardly
But
anybody's going to say,
Trump is vile, and I'm disappointed in the Democrats. The mayor of LA and the governor of
hmm,
California aren't much better, but at least they're not sociopaths, I guess.
yeah, yeah. And tell me, something I really want to know. What's it like entering into places like you went into 26 countries? Like, what does that journey look like leaving your home country? And I know it's really on the franchisees, but you still had to like navigate laws and like the markets and stuff. Like, what's it like going to Japan or Russia? No, holy geez, my
So
brand's going to these other countries. What does that feel like, and what's that experience like?
I guess because of Vietnam or going to Europe when I was, in high school, I've always loved travel,
Hmm.
but I also realize there are vast cultural differences.
Yeah.
But we now have 105 Gold's Gyms in Japan and 137 in India. And God bless the Japanese, they copied us. In fact, it was one of the few Gold's Gyms where actually had as you mentioned earlier, the Gold's Gym logo over the mirror. So that
Yeah.
you can't take a picture in Gold's Gym Venice without knowing where you are.
Yeah.
It's such an obvious branding opportunity, even now with social media. Back then it was the magazines,
Yeah.
but so many gym owners miss that.
Hmm.
But no, I love the fact that we had so gyms. Again, we were bringing fitness, a new concept all over Europe. Um, I've been everywhere in Europe, and in fact, the Gold's Gym just opened a fantastic facility, two gyms in Milan, and we have a beautiful
Yes.
Gold's Gym in Paris. It's probably the nicest gym in France.
Yeah. I
But
haven't
so
seen that
again,
one.
have you seen it?
No, but I saw the Milan one.
But the one in Paris is right next to Disney, the Disney World.
Wow. How does that
So
make you feel though? Like I wasn't even thinking about this, but how does it make you feel to be 81 years old and you look back 1979, the 80s, the 90s, and then your exit in the 2000s, and then watching the market change? And I mean, Gold's Gym, obviously there was after you left, it seemed to kind of trip over its feet and stumble and lose its way a bit. Then RSG Group, I believe, acquired it. I think they're still the owners of it now, which they own McFit and High Mat and John
yeah,
Reed.
they own a dozen gyms. They
Yeah,
have they have respect for the brand. I don't think they quite get it, but they're German. They're very hard-headed.
yeah,
And I've tried to, work with them, but it's difficult. But yeah, they like for instance the Gold's Gym in Milan. You've been there. you wouldn't know you were in Italy, right?
Yeah.
So I wanted them, my hope with Gold's Gym was that if you were in a different place, different Gold's Gym, you would have fun seeing the cultural difference. You would know you were in Paris or Milan. My God, not they shouldn't all look alike. We're not, we're not McDonald's. We're not selling the same hamburger. And
Hmm.
even McDonald's, my God, you go to McDonald's here in Italy, it's totally different
It is. Yeah. Yeah.
uh, anywhere in Europe with a McDonald's. But so anyway, but yeah, we would, I think just like McDonald, I mean, Ray Kroc was one of my inspirations, and the McDonald books are great reads. But how they worked with their franchisees and how they developed the market. But they pioneered basically coffee in a paper cup in Europe. Who they were selling. I remember going to a bodybuilding contest in Graz, Austria. No, I'm sorry, oh, it was in Slovenia, now a former Czech Republic, Bratislava, and there were 16,000 people at this event, and
Wow.
they were selling coffee in China cups with saucers. I mean, how nuts is that? But that's a lot of what I see in Europe still, even with the gyms. They're just there isn't that American sensitivity. The Japanese got it right. I mean, they asked me after I saw a dozen of their gyms or more. I said, what can you teach us? I said, you could teach us Americans about customer service.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So they nailed it. But again, they're, culture, you have to take your, shoes off. We're, two or three different times in the gym, and in the Chinese Gold's Gym in Shanghai and Hong Kong, I think there were 40 showers because the Chinese bathe. All the years in America, I never encouraged a gym with more than say 6 showers for the men and six for the women,
Hmm.
because people in America don't typically shower at the gym.
Yeah.
So there are these cultural differences you have to well, the, Ge- one of the German gyms I went to had a bar in it, and they allowed smoking. They actually had ashtrays welded on the machines. Uh, I mean, and people here in Europe are still smoking in America. So,
Yeah,
uh, yeah, there
it's
are
true.
these differences. So you got to laugh and kind of encourage them to move on.
Move on a bit, right? So that, I mean, so you think obviously if you're in America, you're in Canada, North America, and you're going to Europe, you're going to the Middle East, you're going to Asia, it's not just that the services might change or the square footage or the showers. Do you think like the actual brand should it express America, or do you think it should actually integrate and feel like you're in Italy? That's what I'm kind of taken away from this is like it's not just the services that would change, it's actually the design might change a bit too.
Yes, I think so. I mean, I would like you to know that you're in Milan or
Hmm.
Paris.
Yeah.
Certainly, if you're in the East, if you're at a Gold's Gym in a Muslim country,
Yeah.
you know you're someplace different. I mean,
Sure.
one of the fun chapters in my book is a story about when I was talking to somebody who wanted to franchise rights for Saudi Arabia, and we went into this 2 or 3 hour discussion about how you handle women in a gym. And it's a fun story. I don't know if I would, I'll tease your members to
Yeah.
read
Yeah.
it for themselves.
Yeah. Yeah. They go ahead and read it for themselves, right? So, yeah, I mean, it's a different culture, and that's the thing coming from America or from Canada. Sometimes you get culture shock going into some of these other cultures. You can't understand how they operate. And locally, if you were opening up a chain of gyms in America, you think that each one should, like, obviously you got to have a standard operating procedure and they should be similar, but you think there's value in considering that each location might have a different vibe to it?
Definitely. I mean,
Okay.
again, look at McDonald's motto.
Hmm.
Basically, it was same as ours. We wanted a place that was friendly,
Hmm.
that you knew what you were going to get, and it was maintained and clean. That's basically McDonald's.
Yeah.
Uh, but then how you interpret it. For instance, I had the Gold Gym in San Francisco. A lot of the early gyms had babysitting services.
Yeah.
Well, that makes no sense in San Francisco. I was recently in one of the former Gold's gyms in San Francisco. They have a huge dog sitting area. A lot of their members have pets, so they bring their dog to the gym, and the dog gets to socialize with other dogs. That's adapting to a different market.
Yeah.
Or same way you were talking about cardio and how that's
Yeah.
changed. Some of my gyms that were near universities, uh, we needed five, step mills. Some maybe one was enough.
Yeah.
So I would caution gym owners that were starting up, don't just buy 100 pieces of cardio, a third this, a third that, a third whatever. See what add equipment is needed, but see what your market wants.
Yeah.
I, for
Hmm.
most recently, treadmills seem to be the most popular, but that seems to be changing again. So,
Well, let's talk about that for a sec. So there's an LA Fitness I could walk to from my house, but I drive to the other end of the city to go to a club just because of the equipment. And I don't even really like the club. It's just they have the equipment that I want, and they have the biggest turf track in town. And usually at least one day a week, if not two, I'm on the turf. I like to push, I like to pull, I like lateral work. I only bodybuild 2 days a week now. Everything else is cardio mobility. I'm 42 now, so I just want to maintain my muscle and do these other trainings. And then I go to LA Fitness. I would have a second membership, but they don't have a sauna. And I use the sauna 4 days a week because we all know now how good it is. So like a simple sauna they'd have my membership. They have this massive pool and basketball court that takes up insane amount of square footage. No one's in the pool, no one's in the basketball court. And then the whole center of the gym, there's got to be, Ed, a million to one four in cardio equipment. There's just rows of Life Fitness treadmills, ellipticals, recumbent bikes. They do have 6 stairs, and the stairs are always full. I think you can always add stairs, but they don't have any functional area at all. And they have this massive. But how does an organization like that make a pivot? Because you'd have to sell hundreds of millions of dollars if you wanted to change all your locations to get rid of this equipment at pennies on the dollar and then restructure. But I think that's something that if someone's considering opening up right now, you don't need to spend those millions of dollars on cardio like you used to. You think about turf, a good quality turf, you might spend $10,000 and then you wrap it with things like plyo boxes. You might have assault bikes or sprinting treadmills. These are a fraction of the cost of some of these electronical pieces, and they last. You can hit them with a sledgehammer and you can't break them. And they're so versatile, right? So like it brings your cost way down, but it also brings in the CrossFit community, the High Rocks community, the athletic community, and it creates community in the center of a gym. Like, do you see that if someone was creating a model now and they're looking at the Life Fitness model, for example, or sorry, the LA Fitness model, for example, do you think that's a small switch in saving money, but also providing a better value and bringing in a different member?
I do think it's a good way to differentiate yourself in the market. Again, LA Fitness is probably has a contract with Life Fitness, that basically that makes them less nimble than a small operator.
Yeah,
They have to get all their equipment from Life Fitness, which, frankly, they don't. I agree with your earlier statement or one of your posts. No one company makes it all.
yeah,
So I had incredible variety in my gyms.
hmm,
I had my favorites, but I also had a lot of different unusual equipment. Um, and again, it's this you're running a business. I don't think these European countries manufacturers understand that the prices have got to be affordable for a new business. I think the average e-gym piece is around $16,000.
yeah,
Uh, uh, Jim 80 used to come to Venice once a year and basically copy the carrying equipment and then go back to Germany and over-engineer it, which made it, over-designed, overweight, heavier, and more expensive. So a lot of these European companies that they just don't get it, um, because I think there weren't many, gym chains or whatever in Europe making it because of
yeah,
the cost of entry.
yeah.
So no, I think again, all of these big operators, you can outflank them really by being that nimble who operator who's different.
So as we come to the end of this, there's a couple things we have to get out. One, if someone was thinking about buying a franchise, whether it's a gym model or even a boutique model, is there any advice you would give for them to look at, like say royalty fees, contracts,
Yeah, yeah.
marketing?
Frankly, I don't know of one franchise I would recommend buying.
I'm the same. I'm the same. But if there's
Uh,
anybody that would know, it'd be you, even above me, right? So like,
well, they got greedy and stupid, all these people. I mean, when I sold Gold's Gym, we had a 704 locations. I think they're down to 600 right now, and most of those are overseas, more overseas than in America,
hmm,
because we put in place performance agreements versus what the operator, the people we initially sold to in '04. It was an oil billionaire out of Texas. He said, "Well, you want to make more money, you just raise the price of oil, the barrel." I mean, and so he raised the franchise fees, I think, to almost 7% of gross revenue. Well, if your gym is grossing 100 grand a month and you're now paying 7,000, whereas before you were paying 1,000, that it's not worth it.
yeah.
So, and I believe all of these. Well, the only one that is actually reasonable, I should take it back, is Anytime Fitness. It's only, I think, charging 750 a month.
Hmm.
So that actually is a doable model, and they've got some good concepts. So I'll kind of go back on what I just said,
Well, it's a
but
big shout out to Anytime Fitness coming from you.
yeah, no, and they did smaller. They're because their gyms weren't manned. They were 24 hours. Um, their size was mandated to limited in certain states. Now, of course, now that's the one big change. I would never have done a 24-hour gym in the past, but now with the technology,
Hmm.
with the cameras and the entry systems, I would say that's feasible.
Yeah. Now
So
let's flip that on her head. Let's flip it on its head for a second. If I
um,
had a concept that was doing really well, would you recommend to stay corporate or would you recommend to go as a franchise? And if you chose to go franchise, is there any advice you would give to those people on setting up a successful franchise?
again, don't be greedy and stupid.
Hmm.
You want your franchise to succeed. I always wanted Gold Gym to be the largest gym chain, so I wanted our fees to be reasonable.
Hmm.
Uh, and again, the secret there too is we were selling them a lot of merchandise. So in a way, that was kind of our concealed royalty because a good Gold's Gym back then would buy about $7,000 a month worth of product from us. And they would, we sold a T-shirt to them, which cost us $2.25 for 450. They sold it for 9.95. So everybody doubled their money.
Hmm.
And T-shirts nowadays, I mean, one reason we licensed all that out, we couldn't get we outstripped our supply lines. But nowadays you can get T-shirts from China or anywhere, Turkey, that are very good quality for about the same price. The embroidery, the silkscreen has gone up a bit, but there's no reason T-shirts and tank tops and sweatshirts should cost $20 to $40. It's a ripoff.
Yeah. So the benefit of corporate versus franchise is just you're going to be able to get your service and your brand faster. You don't have to find good managers and operators because usually franchisees are all in. They're invested with their life
Yeah,
savings.
yeah.
If you were to do it all over again right now, if you and I were starting something, which maybe we will, because I have a lot of stuff I'm wrestling with, and I'm sure I'll tell you about that on a phone call at some point in time. But if you had to do it all over, would you always choose the franchise route or would you choose a corporate route?
Well, I don't know how you can. I mean, a gym as a service business, which there aren't many like that.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, I don't know how 24-hour LA Fit. I mean, I've heard a lot of horror stories. I don't know how you can, especially nowadays. I mean, my former partners tell me that they couldn't do it now because they couldn't find the people to work the gyms.
Hmm.
So I would think a corporate entity like 24-hour LA Fitness, Equinox is having a horrible time right now finding workers. So you really need the mom and pop or the couple of guys that want to do a gym, couple of gals. I think it's better to franchise than to try and own them all.
Yeah.
Um,
And let's
Jane
end with,
Fonda. Jane Fonda was an early member of our Gold's Gym in Santa Monica and then Venice, and she wanted to franchise her aerobic studio. I said, don't. I said, you just do a workout video.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's the truth.
Because again, how are you? I mean, every owner I talk to, and this is why I'm kind of down on boutique gyms. You got you. It's so hard to find a great Pilates instructor, yoga instructor in Omaha, Nebraska. You got to pay $60 an hour too. It's so really, I think the gym business is not one that is conducive to corporate ownership of a
Mhm.
large number of facilities.
Well, before we end with my last question, something I might be able to provide value on, and one of the models that and concepts that I'm designing right now for someone is uh, creating their own university. So bringing in the
Yeah,
greatest instructors to teach
yeah.
how to be the greatest, how to choose music, how to choose your exercise selection, how to choose your words, how to carry your voice, create energy, and change that room. And I think so long in our industry. We have hope that the schools and the industry will bring people up to speed to service our business. But when you join the military, they'll take anybody and they train you. When you come out the other side, you have systems, you have character, you have work ethic, you have discipline. And the same as in our industry, everybody's running around hoping that these leadership falls in their lap versus trying to train it. So, and with digital experiences now, you can bring in a few of the best people in the world, pay them well, and you can set a standard and a curriculum to train your personal trainers, your front desk staff, your concierge, your salespeople, and also your classes. And I think this is something with there's a business model in this where someone teach like they create a model and come in and teach a standard. It's the gold standard. Our instructors are taught by Ryan and Ed
Well,
X, whatever the company is, right?
it's the Apple model.
Yeah, there you go.
Yep. I
Yeah,
mean, I couldn't tell you how many Apple stores I've been at, no, both to see architecturally, but also to get help.
yeah.
And I don't think I've ever been to one, we're talking hundreds, that I met anyone who I would hire to work my front counter, but they're so well trained. I have not had a bad experience ever.
Hmm.
And I think they use the same people the Four Seasons hotel chain uses to train their staff.
Yeah,
So again, the front desk person is the most important person in your gym.
I agree. First point of
And
contact.
I see so many gyms nowadays that don't take that seriously. I
Yeah.
mean, I've been to a couple I was in a couple in England where, the gal's outside smoking a cigarette, having a cup of coffee. She's your first impression, your
Check
contact.
yourself in.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
No kind, and this is where America, I think, I sound pretty chauvinistic here, but this is where America leads the world is in customer service.
Hmm.
And a lot of these businesses here, I mean, I shut up. I try not to be, the ugly American, and do it, but I just see so much here that could be done better
Yeah.
from a customer service standpoint.
Yeah. Absolutely. Ed, let's end on when it comes to entering this industry, if you're somebody that has a vision, you could be a young person and you want to enter into this. There's so much to go through. There's all the demographic research you talked about. It's coming up with a brand, it's coming up with a concept, it's doing the designs, raising the capital, or getting financing, architecture, permits, construction, leadership, technology, marketing, equipment brands. I mean, people don't understand how valuable your time is, right? Right. Like to sit here and even me, and I'm just a fraction of what you are because of, where I'm at and what I've created in the industry. But if you could give a handful of advice to people, talking landlords, leases, architecture, construction, what would you just want them to know if they just had a quick cup of coffee with you, what they should look at and what they should look out for?
I would tell them to basically get to know their landlord,
Mm,
their potential landlord. And that's the most important time you have in your lifetime of your project. I would ask your potential landlord to give you the name of three tenants you could contact and talk about the relationship they have with them. And if he can't do that, then walk away.
mm,
Um, there, I've had a range of landlords, from mom and pop to the biggest corporate landlord in America, out of New York or Equity. But yeah, you've got to know, you've got to make sure that relationship is good and your rent structure is reasonable. Because when I started, the rent was about 12% of gross revenue, which worked great. it's grown to 40% in a lot of cases. That doesn't work.
No.
So it's very important. That would be my first advice. And then secondly, regarding the name, um, if you're not going to go with, some corporate strategy, then I would, tie in your town name so that you're the little guy that local people want to support.
Okay.
Um, you're not LA Fitness. You're massive. What's the word? Massasauga,
Mississauga.
Mississauga Fitness.
Yeah.
You're a local homegrown product. You're not the big guy. You're the little guy that wants to make it. You're going to be more personal. Yeah.
Very,
Even
very
even
good.
you'll love this. Even LA Fitness, when they went to the Bay Area, San Francisco, they changed their name.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because people weren't going to join an LA
Oh, wow.
gym.
I didn't know that. I didn't know that.
Yeah,
Makes sense. Oh, yeah, because LA, the
yeah.
big city, right?
And my former partner, God bless him, Jerry McCall in San Jose, when he dropped a brand in that area, he went with American Barbell Club.
Hmm.
That to me just that limits your market right there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
Absolutely.
Another Gold's Gym brand chain, one of our operators, he called his clubs Urban Active Fitness. A lot of stupid names.
Yeah. Yeah. There is a lot of
So,
stupid names. I know. I know.
well, even EOS Fitness, I guess it's working, but I guess he was a Roman god. But I mean,
Yeah, people just don't get the names on a lot of this stuff, but as long as you have a good service and you tell your story right, you can kind of, but if you look at some of the biggest brands in the world, you scratch your, even Lululemon, like what does that even mean? You know what I mean? But
yeah, yeah.
one time Lulu was leading. So landlord is the probably, and you're right, because that's going to dictate your next 10 to 20 years and what they're like to work with and what they're going to put into it for you and how they're going to take care of you because you are partners. You're stuck with them.
When I did our deal with the landlord in Venice, I put in a lot of 5-year options, and until recently, they were still operating on those. So
Oh,
that's
wow.
just that's how long that the time flies. That's how
Yeah.
uh, those 20, 25-year leases can go pretty quickly.
Yeah. Well, everybody, Ed Connors. And Ed, thank you for everything you've done for our industry. You truly are one of the pioneers and you've shaped modern fitness. And here you are still giving back from Italy. Guys, if you haven't got a chance, if you're in our industry, you got to get this book, The Three Muscleteers. It's not just a read where you're going to hear about Ed's story. You're going to walk away, just like you saw in this conversation today, with value and lessons that you can actually use to make yourself more impactful and more nimble within the industry. I'll put a link down below. Ed Connors, guys, from 1979 to set one location to 704 locations and still giving advice to the industry. Ed, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll talk soon. I'll send you a message after, Ed.
All right, thank you.
Okay, bye bye.